Hey, good afternoon to you. 3:06 now. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. Coming up on the show, Mike Davis is here at 3:30 as the left continues its ballot rigging nationwide. A constitutional debate is ensuing, and the Supreme Court set to take it up. Mike Davis will react. Joe Buccino is here with us at 4 o'clock. Former U.S. Army colonel will talk to us about how Loyd Austin, well, he's got to go. He's got to go for all of his lies. Joe will talk about that. Congressman Matt Rosendale is here at 5 o'clock. We'll talk to him about this government funding fight. Apparently the Speaker and the leader of the Senate have come up with an agreement on that subject. And Russ Vought is here at 5:30. He'll give us an inside look at what that spending package looks like with a bill of $1.6 trillion at least. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Would appreciate your contributions today, especially if you're a military guy who thinks that you're entitled to know whether or not your chain of command is intact. What is going on at the United States Pentagon? Does anyone inside of this Biden administration think that you are entitled to any information at all about anything of importance? Like a guy in the presidential line of succession just going into the ICU for days on end and nobody knowing about it because neither he nor anyone around him thought that it was worth telling anyone else about it? What secret are they keeping? Why are they possibly doing that? If anything, I want my federal officials to be oversharing. Give me more information about your activities. Heck, it's one of the reasons, it was actually one of the big reasons I thought that Trump's tweets were the best. I'd rather know what my nation's leader is thinking or contemplating or reacting to. I'd err on the side of more knowledge about that and not less. That's why I was always supportive of the tweets, even when they make people feel uncomfortable. I was for it. And I don't care who you are. If Joe Biden had access to Twitter right now, well, he'd probably get the country into a lot of trouble. But still, if he had access to it, I'd prefer that he was expressing his thoughts, as poorly constructed as they are. So, we have a bunch of defense secrets, don't we? The Secretary of Defense just spent days in the ICU this past week. He's still hospitalized at this very moment due to complications from a secret medical procedure. We still don't know what medical procedure he received. That information has not been made public. What medical procedure could possibly be deserving of such secrecy? What are they hiding from us? Why would you do that? If he had an appendectomy or something, why would you hide that detail, right? If he had, a bypass surgery or whatever, why wouldn't they just convey to the public the details? Why are they keeping this a secret? Was he hoping it would be a big surprise? Maybe it was a gender transition surgery. Maybe he didn't want to let the cat out of the bag, so to speak. We'll wait to surprise everyone. The Defense Department failed to notify the White House about Defense Secretary Loyd Austin's hospitalization for several days. According to several reports, the Daily Caller summarizing here, Austin was admitted to Walter Reed Hospital in Washington, D.C. on Monday, that would be last Monday, for a medical issue related to an elective procedure he underwent. Elective meaning he chose to do it. It wasn't mandatory. It was elective. Reportedly ending up in the intensive care unit for several days, according to both NBC News and Politico. Key White House National Security Council officials were not informed of the hospitalization until Thursday. All right, so Monday, he goes in. He's put into the ICU as a result of some unintended consequence, apparently, of this procedure, and no one at the White House is made aware until Thursday. DOD officials and legislators were not made aware until Friday, so they found out a day later. Well, that's fine. Just an entire work week with the Secretary of Defense in the intensive care unit and nobody knows about it. The DOD did not release information about Austin's hospitalization to the public until Friday evening, and the agency reportedly gave congressional leaders a heads up of only 15 minutes before going public. Jake Sullivan, who serves as President Joe Biden's national security advisor, was not made aware of Austin's status until Thursday. Remember, before the Defense Department, but Jake Sullivan finds out on Thursday. One Pentagon official told Politico that Austin's staffers told their office that he was working from home for the week. Oh, so they were lying. Quote, this should not have happened this way, one anonymous U.S. official told Politico, which granted anonymity to allow the official to speak freely about a sensitive subject. While Austin was out of commission, his deputy, Kathleen Hicks, executed his duties on an acting basis, according to NBC News. Hicks was not in Washington to oversee the agency, but instead on vacation in Puerto Rico. Additionally, when Hicks assumed Loyd Austin's duties, she wasn't told that he was in the hospital, according to CBS. So isn't that amazing? So here you have the deputy. The next up, she takes over the responsibilities of the Secretary of Defense, and she's not told why. She's just been vested with that power. She's not even told he's in the hospital. Did she ask a question? If somebody called you and said, hey, you're taking over all of your boss's responsibilities right now. Why? We can't tell you. What? What is this? Where do I work? How is that even possible? There are a lot of lies baked into this story, aren't there? You can tell. It's got all the markings. Not telling us the specifics of the medical procedure, that's a giveaway. There's something deeper going on here that they are not conveying to you or I. What's the pattern of the chain of custody here of people being told information? Joint Chiefs Chairman General C.Q. Brown was not informed of Austin's situation until, you ready for this? Tuesday, according to Politico. So that's interesting. So Monday, Austin goes into the ICU. By Tuesday, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs did know the following day. And yet the Pentagon wasn't made aware until Friday. The White House wasn't made aware until Thursday. So the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, whose sole job is to give advice and counsel to the president of the United States on the way to manage the military, can't tell him that Loyd Austin's in the ICU. That didn't get out of his lips? The hell's going on? Kathleen Hicks, the defense deputy secretary, not told, as you know. She wasn't even aware until Thursday. She was doing the job, supposedly, all week. And on Thursday, she found out. One senior U.S. official saying to Politico, my sense is his desire to be private about a routine medical procedure kind of backfired when it didn't go as planned. He's so loyal and duty-bound. It's all just very odd. Donald Trump says that Loyd Austin should be fired. President Trump posting to his social media platform this week that, quote, failed Secretary of Defense Loyd Austin should be fired immediately for improper professional conduct and dereliction of duty. Loyd Austin has now responded to all of this. He says, my bad. My bad. He didn't use those words, but basically did. He acknowledged he could have better informed the public about his nearly 5-day hospital stay, which continues, by the way, as the ICU portion is over, during which time the White House and Congress were mostly kept in the dark. Quote, I recognize I could have done a better job ensuring the public was appropriately informed. I commit to doing better, he said in the statement. I will be better. I'm going to live my truth, and I'm going to be better. Quote, but this is important to say. This was my medical procedure, and I take full responsibility for my decisions about disclosure, he added. And what does that mean to you? When you hear that portion, I read that statement, and I thought, what do you mean this was my medical procedure? Nobody's even disputing that. We know that. What is this, one of those things where like, it's my medical privacy. I don't have to tell you about anything. I'm sorry, you're not entitled to that. Not in your job. If you want that, go back to being a private citizen. Secretary of Defense, I get to know about your medical details, especially if you're going to be laid up in the ICU for a week. Yeah, you've got to share some information. The same is true of the President of the United States. The same is true of the Speaker of the House, the Vice President, all of them. If you're in the presidential line of succession, if you're one of the critical leaders of our country, at the pleasure of the voters, well, boy, they're entitled to a lot more than just, oh, sorry, I didn't tell you. Sorry about that. I was out of commission for a week. The Washington Post reports that Biden does not care, though, about all of this. They say that he retains complete confidence, full confidence is the phrase they gave, in Loyd Austin. So in other words, he doesn't care that Austin lied to us. Yes, lied. If you don't share information that you know your bosses, i.e. the public, are entitled to, and you refuse to tell them something out of the hope that they never find out, is that a lie? It sure is. It's a lie by omission. You'd treat your kids this way. If your kids went on for a week and they didn't disclose to you something that they should have disclosed a week ago, were they deceiving you? Yeah, they were. Yeah, they were. And you'd hold them accountable for it if you were a good parent. The White House here, a person over at the White House, there's a lot of trust there on both sides, and this episode has not diminished that trust one bit. The president is looking forward to the secretary's continued service, saying that they have full confidence in Austin. Some other context worth noting here. Austin has routinely suffered complications after elective medical procedures. Did you know that Joe Biden, not just Joe, but Loyd Austin specifically, Loyd Austin has caught COVID twice after undergoing at least 4 different jabs to prevent him from catching COVID. So these are elective procedures, getting the COVID jab. He subjected himself over and over and over, and he keeps catching COVID over and over and over again, despite all of the jabs in his arms and despite the triple masking he's doing with the cloth mask and the surgical mask and the visor. He's got like a welding helmet on half the time. He's trying to stop COVID from getting to him, and it just keeps on getting to him. Loyd Austin is 69 years old. He is fully vaccinated and has received at least 2 boosters. That means 4 jabs. And he keeps catching COVID. Back in August of 2022, he caught it for a second time. I assume he's caught it again since then. I have no idea. Can't verify that. Maybe that's what this is. Maybe he's in the ICU because he caught COVID again. Seems unlikely, but perhaps. So everybody's deceiving us. One last element here to the story that's just coming out. Fox reports that one of the reasons that the information didn't get out was because the chief of staff to Loyd Austin also had the flu. So the person who's supposed to run, the chief of staff in any office, whether it's military or politics, is always the person who keeps the trains running on time. They're the ones there's a reason they're called the chief of staff. They bark at everybody. They keep the schedule. They absorb the incoming. They make sure only the right stuff appears before the principal. That's it. That's the job. It's a big job. And so the chief of staff was under with the flu. So therefore, the presidential line of succession was imperiled because everybody had fallen ill in some capacity. Sorry, we can't tell you. Suspicious at all? Suspicious? They don't tell us anything? Like I said, I've got Joe Bacino coming up. Colonel Bacino will be with us at 4 o'clock. He'll talk about this. He's former communications director for United States Central Command. He thinks Loyd Austin needs to resign over all of this. We will ask the colonel for his assessment as to why. Let's take some phone calls here. I've got Bill in Purcellville here on line 1. Bill, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hi, Vince. Thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
As I heard more and more of the story, I just continually shake my head, and you hit on 2 key words. One is accountability. There's no accountability in this administration, top to bottom. The chain of command and the communications are all broken. They're all not working, and the American public is losing trust. I served in the Navy 26 years, and I've never seen anything like this. I know Loyd Austin is a retired general. Just like you just mentioned, the other generals coming on later today. He should have resigned after Afghanistan, the debacle that happened in Afghanistan. He should have been man enough to stand up to that and own that, and he should resign off of this as well. This is a huge breakdown in communication, and I'll tell you this: I don't know what to trust anymore, and certainly we know it's not President Biden. The fact that he wasn't involved, that doesn't surprise me, but it makes me wonder who is running the show, Ben.
Yeah. Well, it also tells you about their contempt for the public broadly. They don't feel like they need to tell you that much. They're annoyed anybody noticed. And if they're willing to hide details like this over a week for the Secretary of Defense, then what kind of details are they hiding about Biden himself? Right. I mean,
right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I like how they're starting to roll the chief of staff under the bus on this one.
Oh yeah.
So let's grab the chief of staff. Let's go down the chain of command a little bit. Somebody's head will roll, but not the appropriate one. Just like the other day, you had that congressman on from Tennessee. I think it was Mark Green, and they were talking about going after DHS and Alejandro Mayorkas. Why should his head roll for the debacle we've had at the border? He's just executing President Biden's policies. Why don't we go after the big guy? Why don't we go for the big guy? Why are we just beating around the bush here? Someone should step aside for this, and it should be Loyd Austin.
Yeah, that goes back to what you said, accountability, Bill, and there hasn't been any of that in the Biden administration. All right, let's go back to the phones. Matt is calling in from Rockville, line 2. Matt, you're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Vince, when we heard it was an elective surgery, my first thought is, what elective surgeries do 70-year-old men really get? And so then I was thinking, okay, if it was elective, I feel like the chain of command would have known a little bit better. So now we have an elective surgery, which is, to me, is already questionable for that type of demographic.
Yeah.
You have people that don't know what's happening. And then the third thing you take into account that this guy has always seen masked up years after the pandemic has now been over. And I'm curious, was this an elective surgery or was this vaccine-induced injury and something happened, either blood clot or heart issue? And what they're doing by calling it elective surgery is they're trying to form a narrative that, hey, this is personal, do not ask questions, so that it can't be based on the vaccine, because then they know that they'd be lying to the American people all along.
Your suspicion is right in line with mine, which is that there's some sort of political issue with telling us the truth, right? Like there's a liability here. They can't reveal why he's been hospitalized. It's either that or he was getting some sort of procedure for having low testosterone. You know, it's like an ego thing. Like it's like a low T surgery, and the guy's like, really worked up about it. He doesn't want people to know. I don't know what it is, Matt, but there's something that they're either embarrassed or they feel like they have a lot of political liability on. And if it's COVID vax related, well, that explains it, doesn't it, Matt?
Absolutely. And, if it was an elective surgery, if it was these are the best doctors in the world, and that adds to that other element of what was really happening here. The best doctors in the world screwed up something that seems apparently pretty routine.
Yeah.
It's elective surgery. You're going in for, what are you, taking a preemptive strike on a hip replacement? Well, that doesn't seem elective to me. So what really was it? If it was elective, no one's going to care.
Of course.
You're not the only person that's had this issue. People across, whatever surgery elective that you got is, no one's going to care. We care about, now that you're not being transparent, now that starts to get the issue. Just be upfront with it, and these questions won't be raised.
Also, if something is elective, it doesn't mean it's totally unnecessary. People get elective surgeries for necessary things all the time. But what this does mean is that they had time to tell people. They could have planned ahead. Hey, the secretary's going in for surgery. Everyone should be prepared for that day. And yet, no one was. Why is that? Coming up, Mike Davis talks to us about the left's ongoing ballot rigging. It's ahead. Well, good afternoon to you. 3:35 here at News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up 4 o'clock, retired Army Colonel Joe Buccino will be with us on why Loyd Austin should resign as Secretary of Defense after a week of deception. Matt Rosendale will be with us, the congressman, at 5 o'clock. We'll talk to him about the latest government funding fight and the fight to restore America's borders. And then Russ Vought joins us at 5:30, former OMB director under President Trump, with an inside look at what's in this spending deal between Speaker Mike Johnson and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. You can join us at 888-630-9625. 888-630-WMAL. The ballot rigging continues in the United States. The left very eager to remove Donald Trump from ballots, much the same way they've removed all of Joe Biden's primary opponents from ballots across the country as well. The United States Supreme Court on Friday, as we were getting towards the end of this program, announced that they are going to hear former President Trump's appeal to the Colorado Supreme Court's decision to kick him off the state ballot. They're set to take this up on an accelerated timetable. Oral arguments for Trump's appeal are set for February 8th of 2024, coming up in just a few short weeks. Here to talk about that and so much more is Mike Davis, the founder and president of the Article 3 Project. Mike, good to have you with us, sir.
Thank you for having me back on.
So the Supreme Court is taking this up. What does that convey to you?
I think the Supreme Court is going to reverse the Colorado Supreme Court's egregiously unconstitutional decision quickly. And it should be 9-0 if the 3 Democrat-appointed Supreme Court justices have any integrity. If they want to follow the law, they should reverse the Colorado Supreme Court decision with the 6 Republican-appointed justices, because this is so clearly unconstitutional what the Colorado Supreme Court has done.
Yes. Well, not only follow the law, but also stabilize the country. We're in such an intense political environment. And if you even give people like a tiny sliver of belief that it is justified to rig ballots, then boy, that can cause chaos, can't it, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, think about this. The Democrats' argument is they're going to save democracy by destroying democracy, by taking away millions of people's right to vote for the presidential candidate of their choice, disenfranchise half the country. And they want to do this under a bogus legal theory. They want to use a post-Civil War constitutional provision to chase out of office those who engaged in the Civil War, insurrection or rebellion against the United States. They're trying to dust this off to take out their political opponent, their chief political opponent. If you can't beat them, indict him, bankrupt him, illegally gag him, impeach him. If that doesn't work, just disqualify it.
No, that's exactly right. And to put a finer point on it, that was created in order to address the sins of Democrats during the Civil War. And now it's being used against Trump. They're alleging that he committed an insurrection, and so thus, Article 3 of the 14th Amendment justifies this, or Section 3 of the 14th Amendment justifies all of this. Why are they wrong?
They're clearly wrong because there is an opinion on point, the Griffin's case, from then Chief Justice Salmon Chase from more than 150 years ago, that held if you want to disqualify under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, Congress has to pass a federal criminal statute for insurrection or rebellion with a disqualification provision, which Congress did more than 150 years ago. That statute, updated, is still on the books. Jack Smith, the Biden Justice Department, the January 6th committee in the House spent tens of millions of dollars looking for evidence of insurrection or rebellion against Trump, and they didn't find it, and it's because it doesn't exist. Trump said to go in peacefully and protest, right? And it was a peaceful riot, lawful protest, peaceful protest, lawfully permitted by the National Park Service. They got out of control and devolved into a riot. How many insurrectionists go into a nation's capital, get to the Senate floor, unarmed, walk through velvet ropes, follow police direction, and don't burn down the damn place? And remember, this riot started before Trump even ended his speech, right?
And Trump wasn't there, and Trump called for peace.
Yeah, he said peacefully. And there was not an insurrection on January 6th. It was a riot. Trump did not incite that riot. Otherwise, he would have been charged for inciting that riot by Jack Smith, who is not shy about bringing bogus legal theories to go after Republican presidential candidates, like he did to former Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell, like he's doing to Trump. He's going to get reversed unanimously by the Supreme Court again if he continues to go down this path. Now,
additionally, I don't know what bearing this plays, and maybe you can help me out with it, but the second impeachment process for Donald Trump included an article of impeachment for incitement of insurrection, and he was acquitted in the United States Senate on that charge. And so wouldn't that have any bearing whatsoever on whether or not you can even accuse him of being involved in a so-called insurrection?
Yeah, I mean, Trump did raise that argument in his papers for a motion to dismiss, and that's something the courts may need to decide. I don't think the courts even need to get there, because this is so clear under this federal criminal statute that you can't just have a state Supreme Court, 4 whack job Democrat justices on a 4-3 Colorado Supreme Court just decree that there was an insurrection.
Yes.
Trump incited it, and therefore he's disqualified. I sat through the 5-day trial out here in Colorado. It was an expedited election challenge. They let in boatloads of hearsay evidence. They didn't allow Trump to call the witnesses he wanted to call. It was not a proceeding that you would use. It did not have the due process, the procedural and substantive due process safeguards of a criminal trial. It was an expedited election challenge in front of a biased judge, Denver District Court Judge Sarah Wallace, who donated to an anti-Trump January 6th PAC to chase Republicans out of office. And when Trump's attorneys raised this, she refused to recuse. She committed reversible error. And then she found there was an insurrection, but then she flinched. She said that the 14th Amendment doesn't apply to the president. Well, the Colorado Supreme Court just came in and said, yep, it does apply to the president. He's gone. Well, that's not how it works under our Constitution. If you want to disqualify, you have to go under that federal criminal statute, get a federal grand jury to indict, a federal jury to unanimously find guilt with evidence beyond a reasonable doubt, a federal judge to convict, and that federal conviction must be upheld on appeal under that specific insurrection or rebellion statute on the books right now with a disqualification provision. Jack Smith did not charge under that statute. He would have if he could have.
One other element here, as you mentioned, whether or not Section 3 of the 14th Amendment even applies here. One of the reasons that's up for debate is because of the phrase "officer of the United States." If I understand it correctly, the Trump side of the argument is that the president of the United States is not actually a, quote, officer of the United States because of a provision in Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution. What do I make of that?
That's an open question. You saw this Denver District Court judge who agreed with Trump's attorneys that the 14th Amendment does not apply to Trump as an officer. That's an open question. I don't think the Supreme Court even needs to get there. They don't need to get to that weighty constitutional question,
right?
Because there are many, many, many easier ways to get rid of this case.
Got it. So broadly, how looming is the threat of this ballot rigging all across the country, and how pressing is it that the court takes this up as quickly as possible?
Well, I mean, they need to take it up quickly because you see that these Democrats are establishing these bogus legal precedents in blue states like Colorado with the 4 whack job left-wing Supreme Court justices. In Maine, they just had this unelected non-lawyer Secretary of State, Shanna Bellows, just come in and say, yep, it feels insurrectiony. We're going to throw them off the ballot. So you're going to establish these egregiously unconstitutional precedents in blue states, and then Democrats are going to try to use this in the general election in swing states like Michigan. And so I would say this, the court needs to fix this, and the court certainly will. But if they don't, I think that when they go to count the electoral vote on January 6th, 2025, the House should not count any votes where they've used this bogus legal theory to disqualify a presidential candidate. Those are not legitimate results if you're just going to illegitimately take a presidential candidate off the ballot because you fear you can't beat them at the ballot box.
Let me shift gears to something you mentioned a few moments ago, Mike Davis, which is Jack Smith. He is the Biden special counsel dedicated to getting Trump. As of Friday, according to expenditure reports, he spent more than $12 million on this case so far trying to take Trump down. Now, as a special counsel, my impression is that he really has an unlimited pool of taxpayer money to spend in this mission, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And look at Robert Hur, the special counsel appointed to look into Biden's stolen classified records, 4 stashes of stolen classified records, moved several times, unguarded for years, accessible by their Chinese agent, almost certainly used by Hunter Biden to secure tens of millions of dollars in foreign corruption, including with Burisma. These included records when Biden was the vice president and when he was a senator. There's no excuse for the Senate documents. I don't know how you explain that. He must have stuffed them down his pants in the Senate skiff, right? And so nothing happens there. Robert Hur does a bogus, cursory investigation, spends almost no money on that. Contrast that with Jack Smith, who is the Scud missile Democrats bring in to take out presidential candidates. And he did it with former Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell, bogus corruption charge, bogus corruption conviction, reversed unanimously by the Supreme Court, 8-0. It would have been 9-0, but Justice Scalia passed away. It is very hard to get a conviction reversed by the Supreme Court, a criminal conviction reversed. It is nearly impossible for that to happen unanimously. And Jack Smith found the way. He's going to do it again this time. He's going after Trump for presidential records Trump is allowed to have under the Presidential Records Act. And he's also going after Trump for bogus theories under the January 6th theories are going to get, after that case is going to get reversed by the Supreme Court and these other unrelated cases, these related cases, but not dealing with Trump.
Right. Like if you were trying to do like a legitimate job here, you wanted to assign somebody who was above board, who nobody could question, who would look into all of this and establish whether or not some wrongdoing was done, you wouldn't pick a guy who was overturned 8-0 by the Supreme Court, would you?
No, but that's the point. He's going to come in. He's going to try to get this criminal conviction with this D.C. Obama judge, Tanya Schuckin, who's a partisan activist on the D.C. District Court. So you have this Biden special counsel, this Obama district court judge. They're trying to get this very fast conviction in D.C. to interfere in the election, lawfare, to interfere in the 2024 election. And Jack Smith clearly doesn't care if he gets reversed by the Supreme Court after the election. His job is to take out Trump before the election, and Tanya Shuckin's trying to go along with that.
Lastly, Mike Davis, and thank you as always for your time. Do you think that Jack Smith's appointment is even constitutional? I've seen quite a bit of questions raised over whether or not he's even eligible to be in this role.
It doesn't appear so, because he wasn't a Senate-confirmed U.S. attorney before he got appointed into this role. He's not an officer of the United States. So I don't know how you can delegate this power through Department of Justice regulations to someone who's not a Senate-confirmed officer of the United States.
Yeah, there's that phrase again, officer of the United States. Hey, Mike Davis, thank you very much. Good to talk to you as always. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
That's, Mike Davis with the Article 3 project as the left continues its ballot rigging. Again, we do have the Supreme Court taking up this case, thank goodness, and oral arguments set for February 8th. One of the disappointments from a media perspective is that we can't watch them live on video, but you can hear them. They do broadcast the audio, and that's the upside for a radio show. We will have hopefully some oral argument audio for you from that day, February 8th. That's coming up, and of course it's very important because this really gets to the heart of our entire electoral system, doesn't it? And what the Democrats truly believe about it. Everything is disposable. The Constitution itself is not worth the paper it's written on, in their view. They can dispense with it. And they are actively rigging these ballots across the country, animated by a tremendous amount of left-wing dark money, in order to make sure that voters don't even have the option. And the Supreme Court has a historic obligation ahead of it, a responsibility, to put this down. 9-0, like I said, and I was just talking about with Mike Davis. If there's even one of these lefty justices who come along and says, well, it's justified a little bit, you are going to breathe life into this very destructive movement that is trying to tear apart our republic. We've got Biden audio today. I'm going to try and get to it with you. In fact, we'll do that coming up sometime in the next hour here. But Biden is out there saying today, yet again, that Donald Trump and the people who would dare vote for him, or Republican voters broadly, are threats to democracy, and on and on and on. And it is so brazen what's happening, and such an act of projection on his part. His party is dedicated to preventing voters from having options. Rigging elections is something that they are fine-tuning. And they have the brass to stand up there and say, yeah, it's my political opponents are destroying democracy. All right, line 4 is where we find Donna in Frederick. Donna, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hello, Donna.
Hello, Vince. I just wanted to bring about the point that, we've been anxiously waiting for some discussion about election interference, what happened in 2020, and now the rigging, if so to speak.
Yeah.
We've got like 10 months to deal with this, right? But my next big thing is just what if SCOTUS rules against the Trump administration or the Trump team? That, if you talk about mass awakening, that'll do it in a heartbeat.
I hope so. Wait, I hope you're right. That's the optimistic view. That'd be the optimistic outcome, Donna, that people do wake up to all this as a result of that. And I hope you're right about that. I hope that doesn't happen. I hope the court just dunks this into the earth. But man, the fact that it's even an open question is a worrying thing. And it really is. Don't you feel like it's a betrayal of the great gift we have, which is this country?
Absolutely. I think they've betrayed us for decades, and I think as the Epstein exposure comes out and the disclosure with all these court cases, the country may go through a dark period before we recover. And that's the way I see it happening. And by the grace of God, hopefully we'll all pull through together.
Yeah, keep your prayers coming. Thank you, Donna, very much. Let me get Randall in Rockville in here ahead of our next conversation about Loyd Austin. Randall, good afternoon.
Hey, Vince. Nice talking to you. Always, as always, a great show.
Thank
and
you,
great insights from you and your guests.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm retired. And I worked in OSD, Office of the Secretary of Defense, in a pretty high staff position with full access to the SecDef's office. And I can tell you that they're making excuses about the chief of staff having the flu or something. Well, it just shows that there's something very, very wrong with these excuses. They just don't make sense. Because the person who he would be closest to, every SecDef, is his military assistant. It's always a lieutenant general or a vice admiral. I worked for a couple of them. And the current one is Lieutenant General Ron Clark. All these guys in these positions as MA to the SecDef, as you can imagine, always go on to make 4 stars. But my question would be, did the MA, military assistant, did he step up and caution the SecDef from making this, keeping this hospitalization secret? That's the big question. And, you know, the SecDef is also extremely close to the chairman. He has to be.
Yes.
Because they go to the all the time together, and they've got to be linked. And I mean, they have to coordinate very closely. And the stories today are that General C.J. Brown, the Air Force Chief of Chairman,
yes,
didn't know until Tuesday or Wednesday.
But he was one of the first guys. He knew on Tuesday.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
and didn't convey it. He's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. His primary job is to advise the president. Didn't offer him that advice, did he? Thank you, Randall. I appreciate you and your service and that insight. That's fascinating. And it'll be part of the conversation I have ahead with Colonel Joe Bacino, who thinks that Loyd Austin should resign over all of this.